Hey, what's up, everybody? Been a little bit since I've released a video. I have been recovering from a cold. Think I'm finally sitting pretty good. Um, but yeah, I did record one video on Russia, Ukraine, and some of the Zelensky stuff that was going on with Trump. But upon watching it, there was quite a bit of coughing and throat clearing going on during it. Not sure if I can edit it down to where I'm satisfied enough to use it, or if I'll just redo it, or what. Or maybe some new stuff will come out and I can kind of have an updated version. But anyways, this video is going to be slightly different. I haven't done much for videos that focus on economics. Um, Mostly I'm kind of in the political philosophy, history, current events type thing. But this one I'm going to focus on economics and specifically Trump's economic policies and decisions so far and how they've affected the economy. Um, Now, to get a baseline of this, we're going to go back in history a little bit to Trump's first term, which, in my opinion, the first 3 years was pretty strong for the economy during Trump's term. He often brags about it, um, and it is worthy to say that the economy was good going into Trump's first term. It was growing at a steady pace and doing quite well under Obama, but Trump did continue that for his first 3 years, aside from some trade war stuff. The trade war stuff did cause a little bit of turmoil, and it ended up with him having to do some bailouts, pretty expensive bailouts for farmers and steel workers. But aside from that, it was pretty good up until COVID. Now, when COVID hit, the economy obviously took a beating. I don't really blame Trump for that. No matter how you feel about him, COVID hurt the economy across the world. No matter which country you lived in, people were hurt, and probably nobody handled it, the best they could have. It was a new thing. People didn't know how to deal with it properly, um, and how to keep their economy running decently smoothly while also worrying about public health. So I give him, some slack for that. So cue into Biden's presidency, and his first year, there was actually a pretty strong recovery from COVID. Um, People had money from the COVID money that was going out. They were still spending it. People were going back to work. Job creation was good. So Biden's first year was actually probably a little bit better than it should have been because he kind of got like a post-COVID boost, basically. But then that kind of all came crashing down in year two. 2022, we basically saw a mini recession. They didn't call it that, but the economy did get hit hard. GDP contracted. Stock market went down quite a bit. Um, some people started doing layoffs, and tech especially, after they had done a bunch of hiring in 21. But then for 2023 and 2024, things kind of started to bounce back again and stabilize. Inflation got put under control. Yes, interest rates went up, um, but the stock market started doing well. Job growth was pretty stable. Unemployment was going down. Wage increases were going up. So 2023 and 2024 was pretty good and started stabilize, which leads me to my point about Trump number two, where the economy is definitely struggling right now. And the White House and his administration and certain right wing media groups are trying to say this is the Biden economy still. They're not really taking responsibility for it. Now, here's the problem, and I have to explain some basics of the economy in order to make this make sense on why he can't blame Biden and how it is many of his decisions and policies thus far that have caused the problems we're in now. So, when Trump was running for election, his biggest promises were to lower prices, to get prices back under control, to get cheaper energy, to create jobs, and to focus on America. So, first of all, tariffs, you need to understand with tariffs, they do not lower prices. What tariffs are good at is they're good at creating jobs and they're good for national security because certain industries you don't want things being made overseas, like chips, for example. Well, during Biden's presidency, he had the CHIPS Act, which got companies to want to start building and producing technology and chips here in the U.S. Um, you also had another good one during Biden's presidency with the Infrastructure Act, which was increasing high-speed internet, which Trump has made some moderate changes to, but also good for the tech sector. And anyways, for tariffs though, what they do though is they raise prices, and they also tend to piss off the people that you're putting tariffs on because that's affecting jobs for them. So then they'll typically do and affecting their economy. So they'll typically do reciprocal tariffs, which we've seen countries do the same back to us. And so then not only does that hurt jobs in America and hurt our exporting, it also hurts prices. So basically, both countries get hurt on prices, both countries get hurt on jobs, and the consumer is the one who ultimately has to pay more, while also knowing that there's going to be some job loss when it comes to goods that we export. Canada's kind of taken it even a step further and added like boycotts, and our European countries are starting to boycott too. That is very painful on the economy. If American products that we're exporting aren't being bought, we're not making money. Um, so that kind of sums up just the tariffs portion. As for job creation, which was another thing he wanted, well, when you're cutting off a very large number of the federal workforce, they're losing jobs. You have companies that are worried about tariffs and increased prices and reduced exporting. So they're doing layoffs because they're uncertain and they're worried about future spending. So that's more jobs lost. So basically, instead of creating more jobs, we're actually losing jobs. Or at least we're gaining jobs at a slower rate than we were. Um, Job growth is worse so far, just at the start of Trump's presidency, than it was under Biden. Lastly, cheaper energy. That's kind of one of the slogans he went off about. His drill, baby, drill saying that he got really into. Uh, First of all, it needs to be said that we were actually utilizing more oil production under Joe Biden's presidency than we were during Donald Trump's first presidency, despite the fact that there were some added regulations. Now, what you have to understand is a lot of our oil refining actually comes from Canadian oil that we import. Well, what did we do? We put tariffs, or at least threatened tariffs, on Canada um, on oil. So, do you think our oil refineries want to be importing the same levels that they were before and refining that Canadian oil when they have to pay more for it? No. So, of course, they drop production down. Also, if you have production at maximum and oil prices aren't that high, oil companies simply just don't make as much money. They're forced, which the U.S. does export oil, by the way, which again, countries are putting reciprocal tariffs on us. Exporting oil, it and put our own tariffs, oil is more expensive, import and export. Double whammy. So we're not lowering energy prices. We're not lowering gas prices, despite drill baby drill. You could reduce oil regulations to basically nothing, and we still wouldn't see the super cheap gasoline that we saw of 20 years ago because it just wouldn't be profitable enough for the oil companies that they'd be satisfied with it. So they would just slow down their refining. Or you would have countries in the Middle East that just offered us, cheaper oil and undersold our oil companies, which does happen sometimes to where they're forced to sell at a loss. And that's obviously bad for the economy too. So lastly, I want to go to a website now that I've covered kind of the basics and how the promises aren't really being kept and how basic things like tariffs are harming us. And I'm going to pull up a website here, one that's very useful. Let me make my picture here smaller first so that I can show this better. All right, so this is a great website for a resource if you want to look at economic data. It's probably the best I've found when it comes to like the organization of it and the ease of use with just raw data. Plus, you can get articles um, kind of explaining the data. This is Market Watch, and it's an economic calendar. You can just Google literally economic calendar. Market Watch will pop right up. So we can see here last week they started releasing some of the economic data, right? And I'll just go over some of these. Construction spending was estimated to go up 0.1% for this month. The previous month, um, it was up 0.5% for January. So that was Biden's last month, right? And we have Trump's month, new construction spending, instead of going positive at all, it was actually down 0.2%. So worse, less construction. Um, Manufacturing was expected at 50.6, 50.3, and then another drop. Auto sales was actually up a little bit, which honestly is kind of expected because Trump was putting in tariffs. And one of the industries that gets hardest by tariffs is the auto industry. So a lot of people who were aware of what the tariffs were going to do to the auto industry you would want to buy your car prior to them going into place if you are buying a new vehicle or even a used vehicle. Um, then we can move along. So this is ADP employment, and this one was one of the big shockers. So this is new employment, private employment specifically. It was estimated that it was going to be about 148,000. Previous month, 186,000. The actual number was 77,000. And again, like I was saying, you can actually click, brings up an article. Um, ADP says only 77,000 private jobs created in February due to hiring hesitancy amid Trump tumult. Okay, you can, sorry, still a little bit of cough. Get the data from there. So moving on. Um, Services PMI was up a bit. Factory orders, yep, okay, decent. Which obvious tariffs are coming in. Okay, moving on. Jobless claims, right? So this one, it's actually below, which you think is good. We have a lower jobless claims than what we thought there was going to be. But click the article. Jobless claims recede from 3-month high, but unemployment filings jump for federal workers. So basically, you might see that number growing in the future, while as right now it hasn't because people have just started to claim it. And then you also have people who are on things like severance from being laid off. So it's not quite going into effect where they need to claim unemployment yet. Moving along, trade deficit. It was expected that we were going to have a negative trade deficit. Of course it was, right? Because America first. Trump wants to talk about how we're going to focus on America. We're not going to get as much stuff from other countries. You look at the trade deficit, it's actually 131 billion compared to what was estimated to be a negative, which would be a trade surplus for us. So actually, we still, Trump's presidency had a 131 billion trade deficit again. Um, Wholesale inventories. It's another one that jumped up from where it should be. It's another one that's bad. It means that it means that people aren't buying as much stuff. They're not clearing out the inventory. Inventories are building up in warehouses. Moving along, U.S. jobs report. 151,000 of 170,000 expected. Pull it up. Jobs report. U.S. adds 151,000 jobs. But again, Trump tumult to weigh on hiring plans. Talks about the tariffs. Now the labor market's doing. You can look at that stuff. But again, bad. U.S. unemployment rate expected at 4%. Biden's last year, I think it was almost always high threes, mid threes to like a low four. Jumped up a little bit, slightly higher unemployment. Hourly wages growth in January was 0.5%. Hourly growth for February 0.3%. Hourly wages year over year was expected to be 4.2. Instead, now it's expected to be 4%. Consumer credit. This means debt, credit card debt. American consumers borrowed less money in January than previously, but still higher than the expectation. Okay, so anyways, this is Market Watch. Very useful for just getting your raw data, finding out a little bit more details on the data. I kind of covered the stuff from this past week. This upcoming week, if you do want to pay attention to it, coming up, let's see, where is this coming week? Here we go. We have a job openings, consumer price index. This is usually a pretty big one. Definitely affects the stock market. Core CPI, inflation, or excuse me, core CPI, core PPI. Federal budget is expected to go down. Of course, that makes sense, but this one might be a surprise. I'm actually very interested in getting this number because the federal budget is expected to decrease greatly, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're cutting things from the federal budget. That's what Elon Musk's Doge is out and about doing. Um, I'm very interested to see what that number comes in at. Thursday, jobless claims, producer price index, core PPI, and then Friday will be consumer sentiment, which is going to be another big one, basically. If consumer sentiment drops, that means people don't want to spend money, which is obviously bad for the economy. The less people are willing to spend money, The less products and services they're buying, the worse companies do, and so on. So now I'm going to move along to the next part, which this is the big one that you've probably seen on the news or on Twitter or wherever you are. This is the stock market. Now, here we see toward the end of February, this is the NASDAQ. Well, it's the QQQ, which is basically the NASDAQ, the tech index. It's the biggest ETF for that. Um, we were looking at around 540, and then it just started dropping. Now, what happened here is this is the area, this is like the day that Donald Trump said that President Zelensky of Ukraine was a dictator and started the war on Russia, which that got some questionable, curious nods from a lot of people, including our allies. On top of that, he also confirmed, moving along, that the tariffs were going to go into place at the start of March when people were like, oh, maybe he'll postpone tariffs again or he'll cancel some of the tariffs or reduce some of the tariffs. He confirmed that they will go in place. And this is what happened. We've actually lost 13%, and actually you can look at it now that the after hours, it lost almost another 1% after hours today, after already almost a 4% drop today, which is absolutely massive. This kind of stock drop in uh, like, let's see, what's that, 18 days is pretty much unheard of unless you're having something like the housing crisis or COVID. This is a massive drop in the stock market. Um, Trump has kind of tried to deflect on it or tried to say it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. While the stock market isn't tied completely to the economy and how people will feel about the economy, like there's a lot more to it than is the stock market doing well, the economy's doing well, right? Like the stock market was crushing it during Joe Biden's presidency, but the overall economy, it still had some problems with inflation, it still had some other issues. The stock market is not just equal to the economy, but it does have a big effect and it does say a lot about the economy, especially when it drops this hard, this quickly. Like what this is not just the Nasdaq, right? The Dow, um, small cap, the S&P 500, everything is dropping dramatically. The tech is dropping the most, but now I'm going to explain kind of further what this means. Okay, for one, what the stock market can tell you when people get out is it just means they lose confidence in investing in capitalism or American consumerism, American companies, right? So we have the Ukraine stuff and the Russia stuff, plus the tariff stuff. So companies are anticipating that they're going to sell less products and services. Why? Because those products and services are going to go up due to tariffs. They're going to be more expensive, which means people will likely consume less if they can't afford the same products and services. On top of that, you have foreign countries. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to isolationism and the whole America first thing. Foreign countries, by being the global leader of the world, foreign countries believe in us. They want our money. They want to invest in us. They want our products. They want to buy from America. They want to support our markets. They want to put their money in our markets. They want to have US dollar. They love our currency. They love our market. They love our stability. We are fighting with our allies. We are putting tariffs on our allies. We are talking about Ukraine, who is a sovereign nation that got invaded by a dictator of an enemy of a country who's been an enemy of the United States since post World War II, the Cold War, um, and was an enemy of the Republican Party up through Mitt Romney, who warned that Russia was the greatest threat to democracy in the world when he was running for president. That's not that long ago. So you add all that stuff together, and what do you get? Well, you get foreign investors that aren't buying our products, foreign countries that are boycotting our products, foreign countries that aren't buying our products, excuse me, foreign investors that are taking money out of our markets, foreign investors that are losing faith in America, foreign investors that would rather support their own markets to support their own companies, their own like defense companies, military companies in Europe. Those have skyrocketed ever since this happened. Just absolutely skyrocketed. If you put your money there, you would have made like 8 times your money or something like that. But they're taking it out of America and putting it into things like Europe and yes, China. China's market has been growing this entire time while we've been falling. Remember how worried we were supposed to be about China? Well, guess what? The rest of the world isn't as worried about China anymore. They're worried about America. They're worried about what is happening in America, what is happening to American democracy, what is happening to American stability. Why is America, who was proud to be the world police and the global leader, who was proud to offer aid to foreign countries, but in return, those countries put faith in us. They put money into us. They bought our products. They forged deals. They respected us. They are moving on to China, to Europe, to their own countries. That's why this is largely bad. Okay, so that's just covering like the foreign relationship and just tariffs. On top of that, what happens as people lose faith in the economy or people worry more about money? Well, people naturally take money out of the stock market if they're worried about money. So the less confidence foreign nations have, the less confidence consumers have, the less confidence companies have, and you see the stock market fall. Um, so yeah, it kind of explains how it kind of affects the economy as a whole because it's all these different things causing this drop, and all these things are bad. On top of that, as companies lose profitability and value, what are they going to do? They're going to lay off employees. So then you're going to have more people without jobs, which means you're going to have more people who are taking money out of the markets or who are being safe with their money and not spending it on products. And so it's like a cascading effect. Like all these things just make it keep dropping and dropping and dropping until you find stability where people have enough confidence to start putting their money back in, to start having confidence that job growth is going to go up, that people aren't going to be unemployed, and so on. So while people might not think, or while the economy as a whole is not just the market, it does play a huge factor and it does tell you a lot of things. And the market on its own is also forward thinking. So even if things aren't that bad yet, the market is trying to look into the future, and big time money investors are saying the future is not bright right now. So we would rather be taking some money out or limiting our exposure to the markets. And the question is, with our current foreign policy, which has been an absolute disaster, I seriously question how we are going to get foreign investment back on board and into our markets. Um, I think that's going to be a tough thing. I think it needs to start with first raising uh, American confidence and mending some relationships with our allies. We can't keep doing trade wars with allies. We can't keep making Europe worry about us aligning with Russia rather than democratic nations. We need to really start to turn it around. But that's kind of the gist of it with the market. I probably rambled on even longer than I had to, but I love researching stocks, the stock market. I love following it. Even when I don't have much money involved, it's still something that's just really fun for me. I have a group of friends that I talk to on Discord about it. It's just an exciting thing for me. But I'll move on. Now, Trump recently said on Sunday, which is another reason the stock market crashed so much today, going into after Sunday, is I hate to predict things, is what Trump said when he was asked about a recession and asked about tariffs. And what he actually said during this interview, I'm going to play a part of it here now. Um,
Economy for a moment, because there are
we can just
rising
listen.
worries about a slowdown. You've got the Atlanta Federal Reserve saying we're going to have a contraction in the first quarter. Look, I know that you inherited a mess, and you said that the other night.
I've only been here,
but
for
are you expecting a recession?
Okay, here it is saying you inherited a mess again. Now, this is a right wing talking point. Any economist who's good at their job and honest with you, and you can literally look it up, all of them were quite happy with where the economic situation was and how the economy was doing. Like, yes, prices were higher than they were pre-COVID and right after COVID, but they had stabilized. Like, inflation was dropping. And like I'd said, wage growth was going up. This is literally propaganda to blame it on Joe Biden, which her herself is talking about tariffs. And you can find right wing also talking about foreign policy, and you can find foreign nations talking about their boycotts on us and their reciprocal tariffs. That is the problem. It is not the mess he inherited. Like, sure, government spending can be a problem. And yes, there is no doubt some excess to it, but we'll continue.
Recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
So basically, that's what he's saying about bringing wealth back to America is what the goal of tariffs, that the people who try to justify them are that they will work similar to taxes. Tariffs will not build remotely as much for the government as taxes. Not only that, the tariffs will be passed on to consumers, which means your taxes being cut literally will not matter because you are going to be paying more for goods through tariffs. It is literally a tax on you. If your tax bill at the end of the year goes down, who cares? You are paying that by buying products that are simply more expensive because of tariffs. So you are still being taxed. It is a complete myth that that's what tariffs will do. Now, what tariffs can do is create jobs, which he's also been harping about. And I think he's also kind of realizing it himself instead of continuing to bullshit his way through it when he talks about build in America, make your factories in America, and there won't be tariffs for it, right? And yes, we can build some factories in America. But one of the problems is we actually don't really need base manufacturing to be done in America. There is a reason we outsource that to countries who aren't as advanced as we are. We have higher paying jobs. Base manufacturing jobs are not higher paying jobs. They are, in fact, low skill jobs. They are low paying jobs. Now you might be thinking to yourself, wow, Donald Trump has buddied up to a lot of billionaires. These billionaires got rich off of starting companies that have a very high portion of lower tier workers or lower skill workers if you look at some of them, right? But they are rich as can be. Maybe they want more people to be working these lower skill jobs in these factories that they are building, while the higher tier jobs get replaced by these things that have been advancing greatly lately, known as like AI. Something to research and think about. But that's what he's basically saying is we're going to bring wealth back into America by making factories here. Sure, we'll create some low-paying jobs, but our unemployment was actually pretty good recently. Um, Obviously, it's going to go up. So these people that he's laying off from the federal government, um, these people that are getting laid off from these tech companies, um, people that are getting laid off from these companies that were mostly exporting out of the U.S. Sure, they can get their low-paying factory jobs for this base manufacturing that we're bringing back to America. That's not bringing wealth back. That's bringing in low wage, low skill workers to feed the people at the top of the corporate ladder of these companies that are building here. Um, but anyways, moving along again, this video is already a little longer than I want, but it's a topic that, as you can maybe tell, I'm kind of passionate about and kind of frustrates me. This is another article that talks about, yes, while Trump was running, he said this multiple times, tariff. It's the most beautiful word in the dictionary. But as this person's saying, tariffs raise prices on Americans. They do. Um, Trump denied that at first. You had companies coming forward saying, yes, we are raising our prices. We have to. These tariffs, a lot of companies tried to do a lot of their importing before the tariffs went into place, um, which might be one of the reasons for that thing I showed earlier about how we had a pretty big trade deficit, even though it was expected to not be, because a lot of companies were importing before the tariffs went into place to try and get ahead of it and not lose as much money. So that's one thing. Um, but yeah, so basically, if you're looking at the economy today and how it's getting hit, how job growth isn't as strong, how the stock market is falling rapidly, how wage growth isn't as strong, how unemployment isn't as strong, these are policies from Donald Trump's administration. Whether you believe it or not, it is largely tariffs and it is largely our disaster of a foreign policy, making foreign nations not want to invest in us, not want to buy from us, not wanting to trade with us, wanting to boycott our products, um, and just generally not wanting to support us in the same way that they used to. Because we are claiming we don't want to support them. We are claiming we want to become isolationist, which, again, any economist who's good, knows what they're talking about, will tell you how bad isolationism is. Not only that, I can almost promise you that a lot of these people within Trump's administration and around him also could tell you that isolationism is not good for the economy. It might be good for certain people within the economy. Uh, Bernie Sanders is going around talking about these oligarchs a whole lot, and while I don't really line up with Bernie on a lot of stuff, um, oligarchs could benefit from from being more isolationist. It could give them literally more power within the United States, at least. Um, Lastly, the last thing I want to touch on um, is social programs and jobs that are largely being cut from the federal government. Um, so one thing that a lot of people don't understand, they think social programs are just like sucking money out of the economy, right? Sucking away your taxes. Most people who utilize social programs do need it to get by. They do need it to participate in the economy, and most people are only utilize social programs temporarily. There actually isn't that many people that are like welfare queens or take advantage of the welfare state. Like, yes, of course it happens. Of course, there's some fraud with it. Of course, there's people who game the system. But largely, what it does is it allows people who have reached a hard point in their life or are down on their luck, and it allows them to continue to participate in the economy. It allows them to continue to buy goods. As people buy goods, it boosts the economy, it boosts sales for companies, it gives people jobs. So, social programs, even though it costs money to fund them, it also allows those people to continue to participate within the economy. Um, Healthcare, like Medicaid and whatnot, affordable healthcare, it allows people to not worry about one medical bill ruining their lives and not being able to ever come back from it and own a house or own a car or buy groceries, buy a TV. Like, yes, it can. I'm trying to think of how to word this. Like, yes, it can be a problem on a small percent, but that's the percent you need to target. You don't need to target the whole social structure. You don't need to target the whole social program. You need to target the people who are abusing the system and using it for things like fraud or abuse. You don't just gut the social program. It does its job. It does what it needs to. It keeps people functioning while they get through their hard times so they can continue to participate in the economy, so they continue to work the job while them or somebody in their family goes through a hard time. It keeps the cog turning, it keeps the wheel turning. Um, as you lose jobs from these social programs, as you cut these social programs, you are going to see people suffer and you are going to see the economy suffer. Even if you think, oh, this won't affect me, I'm not poor, it will affect you by default because then those poor people aren't participating in the economy the same way. It will affect your job, it will affect your prices. So basically, like the negative is that all these things that can be bad or hard on the economy, Trump's trying to do them all at once. And it's having a compounding effect, which is why we're seeing the massive stock market drop, which is why we're seeing increased prices while also having job loss. Um, and as long as he did them, like if he saw these things as issues and he tried to focus on them like one at a time, we wouldn't see nearly as much pain and it would be kind of much easier to fight through it, even if it was temporarily bad for the economy. But it's just a compounding factor that it's all happening at the same time. If you are worried about a recession or you have a lot of money in the stock market, lastly, I just want to say there are a few things that you could do. Um, Not necessarily recommending it, but you can look into it and it is an option. If you have big stock market portfolio positions, what you could do is open up like some puts later dated, just kind of as a hedge for your stock market portfolio. And then if the market does drop or if the specific company that you buy puts on drops, those puts can make money while your stocks lose value. Um, Even if you have an IRA and there's like a penalty for withdrawing from it, what you can do is you can sell and just hold the cash. There won't be a penalty as long as you just stick with it as cash within the account without withdrawing that cash. Um, if you have something that's like a high percentage debt and you have money that you can afford to pay it off, it's not a bad idea to pay it off now before you get into trouble and focus on like whatever the highest interest rate is of that debt. Get that paid off so you're not worrying about paying the extra interest on top of the potential for a more struggling economy or higher prices in the future. But take care of yourself. Hopefully, we can see some things turn around. Um, Maybe he can backtrack a bit, like he already has with the tariffs. One day they're on, the next day they're off, the next day they're raising them, and then they're dropping them. So there's different things that he could do that would definitely ease the pain that is seemingly unfolding before us, and hopefully mend some relationship with allies, because that's obviously a big harm in general as well, and something that a lot of people are worried about. But that's all for this video. Did go pretty long, but I will see you next time. Hopefully you enjoyed it, or at least learned something from it, or got something out of it. See you next time.